something called Article 5 in the U.S. Constitution. Our founding fathers were absolute geniuses. So if Washington got so corrupt, they said you can actually fix the Constitution and fix what's happening in the corruption in Washington through a convention for amendments, so that you don't need Congress, the United States Congress, to do that. You just do it at the state level. You call a convention, an Article 5 convention, and from now on, this doesn't mean peace. If you see people doing this, it means Article 5. We call for a convention, the people do, and we get an amendment, and you get money out of politics, and you take back our democracy. Now, when I tell you that, it sounds overwhelming, right? How in the world can we do that? How can we fight back against the money of the Koch brothers, Sheldon Adelson, etc., right? Well, it's actually a little simpler than you think. It's one step at a time, and I'm going to bring on two guys to tell you how we've done that in Texas and New York. They're part of a group called Wolf-PAC. Now, in the full disclosure here, I founded Wolf-PAC. I don't run it day-to-day, but I did. And the reason I did is because I think we can regain our democracy. And we've had great success from Vermont to Texas to New York to Iowa, all these diverse places, Minnesota, now Massachusetts, etc. Now, in Texas, of all places, we had one of our first victories. And our bill got introduced in the most unlikely fashion. And in fact, January of this year, there was a rally called Texans United to Amend, rally to get money out of politics. Two people you're going to hear speaking were Todd Jacker, who's the Wolf-PAC Texas leader, and then Tom Smith, who's from Texas Citizen. Let's watch.
For some of us, it's Goldman Sachs and the Koch brothers that's the problem. For others, it's SEIU and George Soros. It doesn't matter whether the money comes from a source you agree with or not. Corruption is corruption.
Now, this isn't just a right or left-wing movement kind of thing. Not only are the Tea Parties in favor of it, but if you look back in history, Barry Goldwater said, we can't continue to allow corporations to spend unlimited amounts of money. It was Dwight Eisenhower who said, beware of the military-industrial complex and its expenditures. This has been a long-term problem, and it's the left and the right together that are saying it's time to end this policy.
Now, they're absolutely right about that. There's one issue, maybe just one issue, that we all agree on in this country, which is that we can't trust our politicians. They don't represent us. They represent their donors, whether they're left-wing donors or right-wing donors. Now, let me bring in the guys who are leading this fight. Todd Jacker, who you saw in that video, is the Wolf-PAC state leader in Texas, and Salim Ocasio is the leader in New York for Wolf-PAC, and they have two different stories. Todd, let me start with you. Now, how in the world did you get Texas, of all states, to introduce this resolution?
Well, it was pretty simple, actually. I just called up representatives one at a time, asked how they felt about it. Talked to Representative Lon Burnham from Fort Worth, and he invited me to come meet with him. We sat down. He actually even bought me a beer, and we talked about this issue. He, at the beginning, thought I was from an environmental organization, but after I explained what Wolf-PAC was and what our plan was to restore free and fair elections here in the United States, he said, you know, Todd, that's the plan that can work, and I've been looking for something like this. People on both sides of the aisle have been looking for something like this, and I'm going to introduce this legislation, and I want you to call my chief of staff on Monday morning and tell him that contrary to what I told him, we're not saving the wolves, we're going to save the republic. And so that's how that happened here in Texas.
Well, Todd, obviously you must be a super lobbyist and have millions of dollars at your fingertips to be able to get this to work, right?
No, not exactly. I'm a photographer and a musician, and you know, just like talking to people, I guess, and that's all that happened.
See, look, Todd's story is amazing, and Salim has the same story from New York. I'm going to go to that in a second, but he's just a citizen. You know, he joins Wolf-PAC. He starts calling up his state reps. Turns out they're his representatives. They actually listen to him. Right? It seems like on the national level that could never happen. But on the state level, it turns out democracy still exists. So, Salim, we go to you in New York. What did you do in New York, and how did you break through, and what are the results?
Well, what we did was we called target voters in senators' districts. And at first, the senators were not really that responsive with us. And then after calling voters and them getting calls from voters, all of a sudden they're incredibly responsive, right? And through our dealings with that, we finally found a senator that is committing to introduce resolutions next session. So
that's great news. So now it's coming in New York as well. Salim, so how much money did you have at your disposal to make this incredible feat happen in New York?
No money. I'm just a Brooklyn boy from the projects of Brooklyn. So, you know, I'm just a regular guy, and I want to do something and live in a republic for the rest of my life, and I couldn't sit on my hands.
See, I love this. Todd from Texas, Salim from New York, and same objective and getting the similar results. Finally, guys, just real quick, give me a sense of how people can participate. Todd, you know, you're now organizing in different states as well. How do people do what you guys did?
You just start by getting in contact with us. You go to www.wolf-pac.com and sign up to volunteer. Send us an email if you're in Texas. Just give me a holler. And if you're in New York, give Salim a holler. But wolf-pac.com and sign up to volunteer, and you can help. It really just takes one person. I always tell folks that your call might be the one that pushes this over the edge and makes somebody pass it, and then pass it in the state and starts the dominoes of all the other states happening. So really, one person can make a difference.
Yeah, it's true. And I remember the story, Salim, when I first met him in New York, really early on. He, by himself, called all the state reps in New York. And I was like, what? And then he's like, well, if that didn't do it, I'm going to call their voters. So where there's a will, there's a way. Salim, Todd, thank you so much for joining us on the Young Turks and for leading the fight. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.